There is a pattern in history that governments do not want you to see. 3 times in the last century alone, sovereign nations stood at the edge of financial collapse. And each time, the same institution arrived with the same promise, "We will save you." But salvation came with a price, not in interest rates alone, but in something far more valuable: sovereignty. And right now, as debt levels across the globe reach heights never before seen in peacetime, that same pattern is unfolding again. The actors have changed. The rhetoric has evolved, but the script remains identical. This is not theory. This is historical fact. And if you understand the pattern, you will see that the world is not approaching a crisis. It is already deep inside one. The playbook begins the same way every time. A nation experiences rapid growth, often fueled by borrowed capital. The economy expands. Infrastructure projects multiply. Political leaders speak of progress and modernity. Foreign investors pour money into bonds and development schemes. The population believes the growth is permanent. They do not see the foundation cracking beneath them. They do not see that the debt is compounding faster than the revenue. They do not see that the borrowed prosperity is not sustainable. And when the first signs of stress appear, the government does what every government does. It borrows more. It prints more. It promises more. It delays the reckoning. But the reckoning does not disappear. It grows. And when the breaking point arrives, when the currency collapses or the banks freeze or the inflation spirals beyond control, there is only one phone call left to make. They call the International Monetary Fund. Look at Argentina in 2001. For years, the country had pegged its peso to the US dollar, creating an illusion of stability. Foreign investment flooded in. The government borrowed heavily, confident that growth would continue forever. But the growth was not real. It was debt disguised as prosperity. When Brazil devalued its currency in 1999, Argentine exports became uncompetitive. Revenue dried up. The government could not service its debt. Unemployment soared. Banks began to fail. In December 2001, the government froze all bank accounts, trapping the savings of millions. Riots erupted in Buenos Aires. The middle class, once comfortable, found themselves unable to access their own money. The president resigned. The country defaulted on over $100 billion of debt, the largest sovereign default in history at that time. And when the dust settled, the IMF arrived. They offered a bailout, but the terms were clear. Argentina would have to cut public spending, privatize state assets, devalue the peso, open its markets to foreign control. The nation that had once been one of the richest in the world was now being restructured by outsiders. The people had no say. The pattern had completed. Look at Greece in 2010. For years, Greece had enjoyed the benefits of being part of the Eurozone. It borrowed cheaply, using the credibility of the euro to fund massive government spending. Public sector wages soared. Pensions became unsustainable. Tax collection was a joke. The government lied about its deficit figures to meet EU requirements. But eventually, the truth emerged. Greece was drowning in debt it could never repay. In 2010, the debt crisis exploded. Bond yields skyrocketed. The government faced bankruptcy. Banks teetered on collapse, and once again, the same call was made. The IMF, along with the European Central Bank and the European Commission, arrived with a bailout package. But the cost was brutal. Greece was forced to implement austerity measures that gutted public services. Pensions were slashed. Taxes soared. Unemployment reached 27%. Youth unemployment exceeded 50%. The healthcare system collapsed. Suicide rates spiked. Entire generations were condemned to poverty. And in exchange for the bailout, Greece surrendered control of its own budget. Foreign technocrats now approved every spending decision. The nation's airports, ports, and utilities were sold to foreign investors at fire sale prices. Greece became a debt colony. Its sovereignty traded for temporary liquidity. The pattern does not care about democracy or the will of the people. It cares only about leverage. Look at Indonesia in 1998. For decades, Indonesia had been hailed as one of the Asian tiger economies. growing rapidly under the authoritarian rule of Suharto. Foreign capital flooded in. Skyscrapers rose in Jakarta. The middle class expanded. But beneath the surface, the economy was rotten. Crony capitalism had created massive inefficiencies. State banks were insolvent. Corporate debt was out of control. When the Asian financial crisis hit in 1997, the Indonesian rupiah collapsed. In a matter of months, it lost 80% of its value. Banks failed. Companies defaulted. Food prices skyrocketed. Riots broke out. Ethnic violence erupted. Suharto, who had ruled for 32 years, was forced to resign. And when the IMF arrived with its bailout, the conditions were devastating. Indonesia was forced to close insolvent banks, slashing access to credit. It was forced to cut subsidies on fuel and food, triggering mass protests. It was forced to open its economy to foreign ownership, allowing Western corporations to buy Indonesian assets at pennies on the dollar. The nation's wealth was transferred to foreign hands. The people suffered. The elites, many of whom had caused the crisis, escaped unscathed. The pattern had repeated once more. Now understand the mechanism. It is always the same. Stage 1. A nation borrows heavily, believing that growth will continue forever. Stage 2. The debt becomes unsustainable. But the government hides the problem with more borrowing, more spending, more denial. Stage 3. The crisis arrives suddenly, often triggered by an external shock. A currency collapse, a bank run, a default. Stage 4. The IMF arrives, offering a lifeline, but the terms are non-negotiable. The nation must surrender economic sovereignty, privatize state assets, cut public spending, open its markets to foreign control. Stage 5. The people suffer while foreign creditors and corporations benefit. The wealth of the nation is extracted. The social contract is destroyed. And when the dust settles, the country is no longer governed by its own people, but by the terms of the debt agreement. This is not conspiracy. This is documented history. The IMF does not hide its playbook. It publishes it. It calls it structural adjustment. It calls it reform. But the result is always the same. The nation is saved from collapse. But it is no longer truly sovereign. And now look at the world today. Global debt has reached $300 trillion. More than 3 times global GDP. Government deficits are exploding. Central banks have printed money on a scale never before seen in human history. Inflation is rising. Interest rates are climbing. The cost of servicing debt is becoming unbearable. And the same signs are appearing everywhere. In the United States, the national debt has surpassed $35 trillion. Interest payments alone now exceed the defense budget. Social Security and Medicare are heading toward insolvency. The political system is paralyzed, unable to make the hard choices necessary to prevent disaster. In Europe, Italy and France are drowning in debt. Their bond yields are rising. Their economies are stagnating. Their populations are aging, making their welfare states unsustainable. In China, local governments are bankrupt. The property sector, which accounts for 30% of the economy, is in freefall. Shadow banks are collapsing. Capital is fleeing. In Japan, the debt-to-GDP ratio has exceeded 150%, the highest in the developed world. The Bank of Japan is trapped, unable to raise interest rates without triggering a fiscal crisis. In emerging markets, from Turkey to Egypt to Pakistan, currencies are collapsing. Inflation is soaring. And governments are once again turning to the IMF. We are already in stage 3. The crisis is here. It is simply unfolding in slow motion, spread across multiple nations, masked by central bank interventions and government propaganda. But the math never lies. The debt cannot be repaid. The spending cannot continue. The promises cannot be kept. And when the breaking point comes, when the next major economy collapses, when the next bank run begins, when the next currency crisis erupts, the same playbook will be deployed. The IMF will arrive. The bailouts will be offered. The conditions will be imposed. And the sovereignty of nations will be surrendered, not through war or invasion, but through debt. Because debt is the most effective form of control ever devised. It does not require armies. It does not require occupation. It requires only one thing: dependency. And once a nation becomes dependent on foreign creditors, it is no longer free. Its budget is controlled by outsiders. Its policies are dictated by lenders. Its assets are sold to foreign investors. Its people are subjected to austerity while the financial elite escape unscathed. This is the pattern. It is repeated throughout history, and it is happening again right now on a global scale. History teaches us that collapses do not arrive slowly. They arrive suddenly, often when the majority believes everything is fine. In 1929, the stock market was at record highs just weeks before the crash. In 2008, banks were paying record bonuses just months before Lehman Brothers collapsed. In 1997, Asian economies were called miracles just before they imploded. The signs are always there, but people do not want to see them. They believe their nation is different. They believe their leaders have it under control. They believe the system is too big to fail. But the pattern does not care about belief or ideology. It cares only about mathematics. And the mathematics of global debt are clear. The system is unsustainable. The collapse is inevitable. The only question is timing. Maybe there is time to prepare. Maybe there is time to protect yourself, to move your wealth, to understand what is coming and position accordingly. But history says otherwise. History says that the majority will be caught off guard, that they will lose everything, that they will wake up one morning to find their savings frozen, their currency worthless, their nation no longer their own. If this opened your eyes, subscribe, because when the next stage begins, you'll want to understand what's happening and why. The pattern is repeating. The signs are everywhere, and the playbook has already been written.